Alright, so let's open up our Fusion 360. Let's create a new project. Create design. And save it. Control S. Let's name it PCB with components. Make sure it's in a proper location. For me, it's in a tutorial directory. Save. And let's create a PCB by creating a sketch. So we can do that by clicking this, create sketch, and we wanted to have our PCB on this plane. So if we're in a top view, we could have the flat surface of the PCB. Let's say I wanted to create a PCB in this shape. I'm going to make it 100 millimeters and say 50 millimeters, 100 millimeters, and let's change this to 25 millimeters. Right. So let's extrude it to a proper thickness of the PCB. Probably the most common ones are 1.6 millimeters and 2 millimeters. For this project, I'm just gonna use 2 millimeters thickness. So we can do that by extruding. You just press letter E to extrude. And 2 millimeters. Alright. And if we wanted to change the color, click modify, appearance, and choose a color here. I'm just gonna put a glossy paint and a color green. Rule number 1 in Fusion 360 is that every body should be a component. So I'm just gonna right click this and create component from bodies. And I'm just gonna change the name to PCB. And that's it. Another thing of my personal preference is that I usually turn the design history off. That way we wouldn't have to deal with capture positions, which is gonna be tricky later down the road. We could also have a faster project, and the only caveat is that we won't be able to slide down the timeline, which is very important. But then again, we could also just use Control Z or click this. So I'm just gonna turn it off by right click and do not capture design history. Continue. Let's save it, Control S, and create PCB. Alright, so now we're ready to import some components. So I usually create a new folder, just name it parts, double click it, and let's download some step files online. So I have a component ready here. This one is a Gen Z connector, 168 pins. Let's download the step file, open it, and let's extract it to a desired location. I usually put it in desktop under 3D files. And we wanted to upload the step file into our Fusion 360. Click upload, select files, choose the step file, and make sure it's in a proper location. And we just wait till it uploads. So once it's completed, click close, right click to insert it into our design, or we could usually just drag this as well. Alright, so here's our component. Let's orient it correctly so it's gonna be sitting on top of the PCB correctly. I'm just gonna rotate it like this, and I'm just gonna bring it up. Here. But as you can see right here, we're actually not very sure if the component is sitting on top of the PCB correctly. As you can see, there's that overlapping right there. So I guess a very easy way of dealing with this is changing the location of the pivot. So we can click the component again, click move. Let's just drag it. So you can see the pivot here, bunch of arrows and then a point at the center. If I start clicking a surface, for example this surface, as you can see the pivot is sitting on top of that surface right there. And say move it forward and backward, and I click this surface right here. As you can see, the center of the pivot is right at that very surface right there. So what we wanted to do is change the location of the pivot. Let's say I'm gonna choose this surface right here, or this one. Let's move it up, and let's click the top of our PCB. As you can see now, the surface that we choose is now sitting perfectly on top of the surface of the PCB. Okay, so let's just move it around. Let's say we wanted to have this surface. Right around this surface right here. So just set the pivot there, move forward, and click that surface right there. Okay, and let's just move the component. Let's say we wanted to put a hole in this component, or let's say we wanted to put a name in there. You can see if we could create a sketch there, and we could draw, let's say, a hole, finish sketch, and if we extrude it, as you can see, there's no hole. It didn't affect the component, but it affected the PCB. That is because of the link right there. So that links this component into the parent component. This is the one that we imported in our Fusion 360. Let's say if I right click this and if I click open, then it will open this component. And if we wanted to put the hole in there, you want the hole and extrude. As you can see, the hole worked now. And then click save. And just click this, update one child component. And as you can see, there's our hole right there. Let's say if we wanted to put a hole in here, and you don't really want to go back to the parent component just to do that, we could actually just break link here. Now we could do the extrusion. Alright. Now the next thing I want to show you is that how to use this component to cut through the PCB. So let's hide this component for now. Let's delete these holes. And let's reveal the component. We can do is click combine, target body, let's choose the PCV. Tool bodies, let's choose the component. Let's see this great cut. And let's say we forgot to collect the keep tools. Here's what's gonna happen. As you can see, the component is still there, but the body is now gone. But as you can see, the legs or the mounting pins of the components left a mark to the PCB. So let's try that again so that the component would still be there even after we collect the combine process. So let's hit Control Z or click undo. As you can see, the extrusions are now gone again because we undo. Click combine, click the PCB, target body, and then for tool bodies, let's click the body of our component. And this time, let's click keep tools. If we hit OK, as you can see, the body of the component is still there. And the extrusions are there. Alright. I guess that's pretty much it for this tutorial.